create some sort of, a situation where both sides could have talked. But it did not reach to a point where the war or the ceasefire could have happened. Ukraine has been insisting upon having a complete withdrawal of Russian forces before any talks could start. And this is something that Russia is not very well, comfortable with. The Russian President Putin has said that Ukraine should get to the realities, political and geographical realities of the world also, because Crimea has been part of Russia for almost 7 years now. And if Ukraine would want to have any peace negotiation before Crimea's return to Ukraine, this is something that is just not possible in this hour of geopolitical, scenario that we are witnessing right now. But meanwhile, these two leaders, Russian president and Chinese president, having, a discussion on the peace plan gives a lot of hope that there could be some sort of agreement where the two sides can go back to the discussion table and a peace or at least a ceasefire could be established between the two sides.
Yes, do keep a track of what comes out of that crucial meeting. For the moment, Abhishek, thank you so much for getting us the latest. With that, it's a wrap from my side. Shivani, my colleague, joins you next.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. There is no end to global Khalistani provocations against India. After Indian missions were attacked in London and San Francisco, an Indian envoy in Canada was forced to cancel an event because of Khalistani protesters disrupting it. It seems like countries are turning a blind eye to the spurt of Khalistani hate on their grounds. Even the common person is not spared. For example, an Indian origin journalist working in Canada was also jeered and heckled by Khalistani protesters, and surprisingly, the local police doesn't want to intervene. If all these people are doing is resorting to vandalism, hooliganism, bullying, attacking a common person, defaming India, should we even call them protesters? For example, in Punjab, a local police station was attacked by a mob. The Guru Granth was used surreptitiously. The government was forced to free a prisoner. Union Home Minister and the Punjab Chief Minister were threatened. Are these protests? These aren't. This is just plain hate and violence and against the sovereignty of India. But so-called human rights advocates don't speak up against this hate. We wonder why. Why aren't India's friends globally too speaking up for India's interests, especially territorial integrity? And how should India tackle this Khalistani provocation which is spreading in the state of Punjab and overseas too? We'll take that question to our guest joining us in just a bit. First up, there was some success for India as the alleged organizer of the attack at the Indian mission in London. This man was arrested. The man you see climbing up to the balcony of the Indian mission in London and trying to desecrate the Indian national flag is believed to be Avtar Singh Khanda, this man who's been held. He is believed to be behind Amritpal Singh's meteoric rise. He is a trusted lieutenant of the leader of the band Babbar Khalsa International, Paramjit Singh Pamma. Khanda is also alleged of giving online demonstrations from Birmingham and Glasgow on how to make improvised explosive devices. Can you believe it? It's a shocker this man was roaming free in the UK to begin with, but at least there has been some crackdown on these vandals who attacked the Indian mission in London, and we believe the man who climbed up to desecrate the Indian flag is this man who's now been held by the UK police. But the fight is not over, as there were more attacks on India in Canada in the past 24 hours. In an apparent fallout of the ongoing operation to nab Khalistan preacher Amritpal Singh, the Indian envoy to Canada had to cancel an event in British Columbia due to security concerns as Khalistani supporters blocked the entrance to the venue there. Some of the protesters were reportedly wielding swords. Reports said the local police were not able to control the mob, which started gathering a couple of hours before this event was scheduled to begin. Similarly, Sameer Kaushal, an Indian origin journalist, was heckled by Khalistan supporters in Canada's Surrey on Monday evening. Kaushal told News18 that he was deliberately targeted by pro-Khalistan protesters. He alleged, as perhaps is visible by the visuals too, that cops remained a mute spectator, did nothing actually to protect his safety, and his left him to fend for himself. Meanwhile, Remember, last evening, India had launched a strong protest with American authorities over the mission attack in San Francisco. This is what the MEA statement said. It reminded the US government of basic obligation to protect diplomats and facilities, asked the US government to take appropriate steps to prevent such attacks, and the Indian embassy in Washington also conveyed the same message to the US counterparts. The White House echoed India's sentiments, but there is a question as to why they don't really take any action on ground. This is what the White House said. Vandalism is absolutely unacceptable. We condemn acts of violence against Indian consulate. Committed to safety of diplomats and security of facilities, the State Department, it said, is in touch with local law enforcement in this manner.
We certainly condemn that vandalism. It's just absolutely unacceptable. The State Department's diplomatic security service is working with local authorities. I can't speak for the San Francisco police, but I can say that the diplomatic security service is working with local authorities to properly investigate, and obviously the State Department is going to be working from an infrastructure perspective to repair the damage, but it's unacceptable.
Since the crackdown on Amritpal in Punjab, there have been several attempts globally to cry human rights violation or provoke people in Punjab against the state. Take a look at how there have been this global bid to create a stir. Canadian lawmaker Jagmeet Singh condemned the crackdown on Amritpal. Canada-based activist Gurdeep Singh Rupi Kaur slammed the Punjab government. Sangrur MP fear-mongered over killing of Amritpal in fake encounter. He is known to be a separatist. India has withheld these Twitter accounts in a first-of-its-kind action before situation goes out of hand. Meanwhile, take a look at how the toolkit India has become all too familiar with has been activated globally. Mo Dhaliwal, self-confessed Khalistani, tagged singer Rihanna online asking her to intervene. He cried that civil liberties have been suspended in Punjab using the internet block as an excuse to cry human rights violation. Remember, Rihanna had once tweeted over the farm laws agitation in India. Dhaliwal is linked to Poetic Justice Foundation, which is under Delhi Police's scanner for allegedly creating that controversial toolkit that was tweeted once by climate activist Greta Thunberg during that agitation. Back home in Punjab, let's get you the latest on the entire Chase Amritpal fiasco. Even as questions are being raised as to why Punjab police has still not nabbed Amritpal despite declaring that they want to invoke the NSA against him, this is what Punjab government said in High Court today, that Amritpal Singh is not in custody of the Punjab police, clarified it again. Amritpal demands Khalistan by all means, including violence. This is what the state government has said. That Amritpal actively is instigating and provoking people to wage war against India. He brandished weapons to create fear amongst the public, and that he questions the Indian constitution and challenges its supremacy. So, of course, these are justifications on why they want to impose NSA on him.
तत्व ऐसे थे जो विदेशी ताकतों के हाथ चढ़कर पंजाब में माहौल खराब करने की बातें कर रहे थे, नफरत भरी स्पीच दे रहे थे, कुछ ऐसे कानून के खिलाफ बोल रहे थे, तो उन पर कार्रवाई की गई है और उस कार्रवाई के दौरान वो सब लोग पकड़े गए हैं और उनको सख्त से सख्त सजा दी जाएगी। कोई भी ऐसी ताकत जो देश के खिलाफ पंजाब में पनप रही हो, उसको हम बख्शेंगे नहीं।
Interestingly, the Punjab Chief Minister says wo sab log pakde gaye hain. The reality is they are confessing again and again that Amritpal is not one who has been nabbed, and it's becoming a bit of an embarrassment for them. But the big debate that's coming up today, how should India really tackle this in global K provocation? We know who these individuals are, we know how they operate, we know where they're based. Then why is it taking all this time?
One, we want an explanation. Two, ask the culprits and the perpetrators of what happened at London yesterday to be quickly arrested and prosecuted. We launched a strong protest.
Let's open this up to the guest joining us. Dr. Vivek Kaul is Hindu Renaissance activist based in the UK. He was one of the members of the Indian diaspora who met the Indian envoy in London after the attack on the Indian mission. Abhijit Iyer Mitra is Senior Fellow, Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Ashok Sajjanhar, former Indian diplomat. Anang Mintal is political analyst based in the US. I want to begin with Dr. Vivek today. Given what has happened, given what transpired at the London mission, today we see, for example, the Indian diaspora coming out in large numbers with the tricolors, supporting, of course, India's pride and India's sovereignty. But give me a sense of what you think of what has transpired in the UK. How have we come to this pass that even the Indian mission is not safe?
Yeah, the problem is the local police, which is supposed to protect the diplomatic missions, is not doing its job. Like Vikram Duraiswamy, who is our High Commissioner, is an excellent person, very proactive. As you could see that a small flag was removed, but he put a bigger flag. He's a very proactive guy, came on a Sunday. He was telling us that he has gone from pillar to post, gone to Home Office, gone to the local police, but he does not get the response back from them. So I told him that whenever we go to an Israeli embassy in London, there are armed police protected, given by the British, establishment, and we should have the same. Because India, there are a lot of enemies India has because we are getting successful. India has a lot of enemies, including Pakistan, the ISI cell in the High Commission here. We need 24/7 protection of our missions all over the world. Like yesterday, Duraiswamy ji was saying that in India, whether it is British High Commission, whether it is American, embassy, everyone is protected by the local police. They don't have to go helter-skelter to ask for police protection. So he has put a very strong letter, and then yesterday we met in the Parliament, and Bob Blackman and other Lord Ranger also are writing to the Prime Minister that Indian High Commission should be given a highest priority in the security
or the right to
division,
protect it, or give the right to
Absolutely.
to India to protect it if the UK police cannot do it.
Absolutely. Actually, good question. High Commissioner Saab has asked for about 12 private security people as well. He is not taking it lying down. I mean, I salute the MEA for getting Vikram Duraiswamy. He's a very proactive person, very, he is not afraid of anyone. And we are having a right person at the right place. Yesterday, within hours, he scrambled us and said, come over to our High Commission. Let me apprise you what has happened in Punjab, why there is rumor mongering. He is A-class. So we, from his side, he's doing everything that we should be protected, and he's right. We need an Israeli embassy type of protection.
Okay, I just want, sir, just 1 second. Dr. Vivek, just 1 second. I just want to ask my producers to run those visuals of the Indian diaspora coming out in large number and supporting the Indian tricolour. I think those are the visuals that many in India would like to see, and great work by the Indian diaspora there. These are visuals of many hundreds of people who gathered. Yes. Correct. You want to say something?
No, I said we send all these videos to you guys so that the Indians can know that we are doing our best for our own country.
Okay. But can I ask you very quickly, do you feel that because, let's say, there's an Indian origin PM in UK, Rishi Sunak, and that's why these activities are growing in UK to put pressure on him?
No.
Or is this purely because of the larger global K agenda, especially taking Amritpal as the peg?
Correct. In 2019, there was no Rishi Sunak, and we had huge attack on Indian High Commission in London. And Priti Patel was the Home Secretary. So these are all paid by their own people, ISI, Pakistan. They're all orchestrated by across the border.
Okay.
They don't have खाने को पैसा नहीं है उनके पास, but इस कामों के लिए पैसा लगाते हैं बेवकूफ लोग.
What can I say? Abhijit Iyer, I don't think anybody could have said it better than what Dr. Vivek has said. That's the sentiment in India. Sometimes we should laugh it off as well, because frankly, this cannot hurt India beyond a point. But I want to understand from you, the Indian government, for example, has been pretty proactive in banning or withholding some of these Twitter handles in India that have been seen to cause a lot of chaos in India, most recently in the farmers' agitation case. Do you think that's the right way to go for India?
See, Shivani, the main thing here is that, India is a sort of mixed society. When you live in Gurgaon or something like that, you're living in 21st century India. You go 40 kilometers outside, you're living in 7th century India. Where one rumor can essentially incite a whole mob. So unfortunately, whether we like it or not, these steps do become very necessary, especially in a flammable situation like Punjab. Now, it's a bit of an academic discussion if Amritpal Singh has the kind of following to trigger that response, because assume we did not do this and it did trigger a large response on the ground. I mean, how many people would have to lose their lives? It's the right to life is more important than the right to communication, number one. Number two, it's very important to look at the kind of coordination that happens on these angles. We know today how much was paid to Rihanna and other celebrities to tweet during that farmers' protest. Not that it changed anything on the ground, but it certainly gave, these people a lot of succor. They need, this sort of sense that they're winning a moral victory or a PR victory to compensate for the fact that they're never actually going to win anything on the ground. The third thing out here is, the UK as a general rule takes Indian security, even the US takes Indian security very, very lightly. And there's a reason for it. Remember, the Sikhs the Khalistanis especially are very, very strong in the San Francisco area. They're very, very strong in the British electorate. They tend to vote as a group, almost as a vote bank kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's almost seen as a sort of sop to them that we're not going to take Indian embassy seriously so that we don't alienate you. The surprising reaction, though, has been Trudeau, who's one of, he's the emperor of woke in that sense, has been very quiet about it. Apparently, a lot of his Sikh MPs have been going around telling him to do something, to say something. And he's been very, very quiet about it. Because if you remember the last time when he opened his mouth, it did not go down well. And you remember what a complete fiasco his trip to India was. But something very interesting has happened. I don't know if your producers have noted this. Today, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has produced a report. There's an investigation ongoing into Chinese election interference in Canada. A lot of the Sikh community there have called for election interference by India in Canada to be probed.
Election interference by India in Canada?
India. Yes, because allegedly diplomats simply meeting the diaspora out there equals election interference.
Wow.
And it is so blatant the way the CBC is becoming another BBC copy. The BBC is completely infiltrated by Pakistanis. The CBC is completely infiltrated by Khalistanis. This is the kind of, equivalence that they're bringing up. If we bring this up, then we can interfere in Indian elections. And by the way, they've been interfering in Indian elections through and through. If you noted, all these Canadians, they come down to India during election season wearing T-shirts of their party and things like that, campaigning. And nobody ever pays attention. I mean, we don't have the police bandwidth to pay that attention and deport them as and when required.
We could fault ourselves for that. The larger question I'm looking at is, what can India do to force a lot of these countries that have been long-term partners in various fields? And of course, India's growing heft, both economically and diplomatically. Abhijit, very quickly before I go to our other two guests, what do you think India can do more to press on these countries? That, boss, we know that these characters that operate from your land, you either hand them over to us or, block their funding, etc. Regardless of the fact that there are electoral things on, there are electoral things to consider on their part. But can India not press on them further?
Sure. Let me give you a 10-second example of what we can do, courtesy the Devyani Khobragade thing. There are illegal roadblocks in front and behind the UK embassy in Delhi, which the UK embassy has put up. We can remove them. The entire periphery of the UK embassy is a no parking area. We can turn it into a parking area. These are very, very simple tools, because if the British police isn't going to protect the Indian embassy, there's absolutely no reason to give enhanced security consideration to the UK High Commission in Delhi.
Okay. I request our other two guests who have not spoken to just give me 30 seconds. Dr. Vivek wants to come in very quickly, sir. 30 seconds, please.
Yeah. India can do two things. One is the cancelling of this overseas citizenship of India to these goons. Other thing is India's greatest strength is its 300 million diaspora on which the Western is a big, their market. India should tie their trade deals with the security of their overseas missions. This has to be done because the West wants the 300 million market for them, and it should be tied with security, which Jaishankar ji does tell them off the record, but it should be tied with the trade deals. That is it. Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, this is an obvious thing to do, right? That's how diplomacy works. Other countries do this with India too. But why don't we do it, or are we now just beginning to have the confidence to do it? Let me take that to Ashok Sajjanhar. What do you think, sir? Do you think the tactic with which India will deal with such provocations in Canada, US, Australia, UK will change now? That India can shift gears on this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shivani. I definitely do think so because, this is a problem that has been in the making for some time, but it has exhibited itself, in such stark fashion only very recently. We've been speaking about how during the farm agitation, etc., there was the toolkit, there were all these people who were coming. I think one thing we need to recognize, and that has become clear from our discussion also, that the Khalistanis and the ISI and the Pakistanis, there is no need to differentiate between them. All of them are acting in concert. They have been acting in concert for a long time, not only as far as India is concerned, but as far as all these other places. What we've been mentioning, UK, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And that is why we have seen that there has been such coordinated action. Respond to your question, are taking up the issue with the UK, Deputy High Commissioner here or the CDA, or for that matter, in London or in Washington, DC or San Francisco. I think this has utility, this has validity. But there should be a contact, there should be a message going from Delhi to London and from Delhi to Washington, DC, that, these sort of things will not be tolerated.
Well, we've seen that
there has to be a direct message going from there.
Ashokji, that has happened, right? I did mention the MEA statement. Even the White House has responded. So you could argue that the very top has responded in that sense.
No, they have.
This just seems routine.
Shivani, just give me half a quarter of a minute.
Yeah.
It has been done, but I think at the level of the ministers, MEA, of course, the official spokesperson will say, in our case, the foreign secretary will say, but that is at the official level. I'm talking at the ministerial level. There needs to be a direct connect. Someone needs to pick up the telephone and speak to the counterpart there at the ministerial level and bring home to them the seriousness with which India take these particular issues. That is going to have, because note verbals, etc., let me tell you, these are standard forms of communication between governments.
Yes.
But, when we want to inform the other side about the seriousness with which we take it, this has to be done. Just one example, when we wanted to get our people out from Ukraine, we deputed 4 of our ministers to the neighboring countries. Why is that? You could have said, that our missions are there, they are doing the job and so on and so forth. It is to impress upon the local governments that India attaches huge importance to this matter. And so, the local government will be extending full support. Here also, if my concerned minister, at the level, they sort of pick up the telephone, NSA speaks to his counterpart, etc., shares with them some of the information, I'm sure it's going to have a much greater impact than just our High Commissioner or my Consul General speaking to their counterparts in those countries.
Okay. Dr. Vivek, just hold your thought. Anand hasn't spoken. Anand, the other way to look at it also is, you look at the global sequence of events, some believe that this is just the chatter around India's quote-unquote rise. This is bound to happen as India becomes a little bit more self-assured on several other issues. This is a very readily available issue. Khalistan issue is a very readily available issue on a platter to kind of poke India with. So we should not be too surprised with what's happening. We should be self-assured, because ultimately this cannot hurt us beyond a point. Do you believe there's credit to that view as well? That we must not overreact either?
Yeah, I do believe that. I think some of the measures that the panelists were saying are maybe a little bit going too far, like blocking the parking or canceling trade deals. Again, that can be also seen as interfering in the diplomatic relations between the two countries. But I do think that there are other measures that India can take with confidence that wouldn't be seen as an overreaction. Honestly, the only way to defeat a toolkit is with another toolkit. So I think India, in terms of its foreign policy, in terms of its engagement with the diaspora, I think it's great to see the Indian diaspora in the UK and other countries come out and support India and show that, the Tiranga is flying high. But I think it's also important that the embassy and Indians all over the world also engage with India and the Indian foreign, the staff also engage with Indians. And like I said, you can only defeat a toolkit with another toolkit. That, engagement is required. Engagement with the foreign media is required.
The only problem, Anang, is that nations are not seen to be employing toolkits. That's the only problem. And I think India behaves very maturely when it comes to this.
The soft power of the diaspora is important. So I think that, at the very least, engaging with the diaspora, letting them know that, this is our messaging, this is, where we stand on things. Those are important as well. And so, I think the Indian diaspora here do sometimes feel isolated in terms of, and also they want to keep their heads down. They have jobs.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out on the street and fight against, thugs and mobs. But I think that's why I'm saying I'm not interested in coming out fighting on the street with the Khalistanis, but certainly condemning them, getting the messaging out, creating context around what's going on is very important. And like I said, engagement with the media is much, much more important because these folks have been here for 30 years. They know how to talk to the media. They know how to talk the language of human rights. And Indians don't know how to talk the language of these countries and how these folks talk because they haven't been here for that long.
Okay.
So I think that's also important.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Vivek, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I wanted to tell the gentleman before this gentleman that Modi ji did speak to Boris Johnson after 2019 when the Indian High Commission was attacked in London in huge numbers. So these things go on. But because India is rising, India is getting trade deals, the frustrated Pakistanis and ISI and Khalistanis are in the same warm bed. So this will go on happening. This will not cease. So India only has to ink it in the trade deals like Israelis do. Go to any Israeli embassy. You cannot enter it. We wanted to post a letter. The British police, the mounted police, and with the guns, they drove us away. So we need the same level of security as Israeli embassies provided by the local police of the country
Mr.
where the embassy
Sajjanha, should that be too hard to negotiate?
Yes.
Times have changed.
No.
Shivani, this is a responsibility. It's a given responsibility of the host state that they have to provide security to the diplomats and to the premises and to the embassies. So I think it can definitely be reiterated. I don't know whether it can really be put in black and white as far as
What about giving the embassy security into India's hand? Currently, we are dependent on the British police, for example, in London. They obviously were sorry as far as their job is concerned. They didn't do their job. But what about, for example, the Americans have this. Dr. Vivek is talking about the Israelis. Why can't we have our own security manning our missions, certainly in big countries?
No, absolutely. I think that is something that we can definitely negotiate with the host government, particularly where we are not satisfied with whatever is happening. But, let me also respond very quickly in 10 seconds to what the gentleman said about, Prime Minister Modi speaking to Boris Johnson. This is an exercise that has to be repeated over and over and over again. Just the fact that we mentioned, the Prime Minister has mentioned to Prime Minister Albanese, and then we sort of, forget about it, thinking that we have already done our work and it'll, for the next 3-4 years, we don't need to do anything. Not at all. I think if the Prime Minister has spoken, then at the level of the External Affairs Minister, at the level of the Foreign Secretary, at the level of NSA, I think definitely this outreaches can be made to the counterparts in different embassies where High Commission, places, countries where these incidents are happening. So that those countries, the leadership of those countries is apprised of the seriousness that India accords to
I think if there's any minister, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has shown that he's up to the task when it comes to handling some of these age-old problems that India has been facing. So maybe he can do it. The Prime Minister doesn't have to be involved in every matter such as this. But obviously, Mr. Jaishankar has shown great
Pro-activism in
pro-activism and also great guile in dealing with a lot of countries, right? Especially the West. Abhishek, I want to come to you. Some of these characters that we are highlighting today, our producers can run that graphics again. You know, these organizations that have been banned in India, they've been banned in India for several decades. We know who their masters are, how they operate, where they operate from. Forget Pakistan, but at least from countries like Canada, America, Australia. Why can't we get hold of these men who are basically running the K agenda from overseas? Is that not something India should look at instead of just sitting quietly, okay, they're in foreign land, we'll stop their activities in India?
So, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, these people have become very, very smart. They know exactly what they're doing in India. Now, the argument I gave you at the beginning, how most of India is rural and very different norms of inciting mobs apply. In Canada, and in America by extension, there's something called the Brandenburg Principle, where unless it's a specific threat targeted at a specific person or group, it isn't counted as incitement to violence, right? So these people hide behind that shield. In private, they'd be saying, let's go burn down the embassy, something like that. In public, they'll just say, oh, let's go protest. And then they'll claim, it got out of hand and people's emotions got riled up and they couldn't. We all know exactly what's happening, right? But it's impossible to prove in Canadian or UK jurisprudence. And therefore, they understand the limitations of the law and they work around the limitations of law. Now, the way the extradition process works is that the crime should have been committed in India. It is not committed in India. It's being committed there. And even for an extradition, it would you would have to prove that this person's actions resulted in this particular incident happening here, which is, again, it's a mountain to climb.
Okay.
So it becomes virtually impossible to do that.
All right, we'll have to come up with some smarter solutions then, because this is becoming an embarrassment for India globally. I think I should highlight what Anang said. We have a member of the diaspora in UK that the Indian diaspora sometimes feels isolated when these things happen. They don't have the right avenues to express themselves, even if they are, of course, they have great pride for India. They want to take on these Khalistanis, but everybody's not going to do that. They've got their lives to run. So we need possibly some smarter solutions as we go forward. I've run out of time on this, but we'll continue to look at this issue closely in days to come. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. Speaking of global events, we are focusing now on Chinese President Xi Jinping, who's met with his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin, amid the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. The Chinese president claimed that he is in Russia on a state visit at President Putin's request and expressed his confidence that his trip will be successful. This timing is, of course, coinciding with him being sworn in as the president in China for a third time. After playing peacemaker between Iran and Saudi Arabia, China is now trying to play peacemaker in the Ukraine war with its 12-point proposal to end the ongoing conflict. Russia has chosen China as its powerful friend against the hostile West. The two have called each other dear friends. But can Putin's dear friend really convince him to end the war? Amidst all of this, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who was in India, also has dropped in Ukraine to meet President Zelensky. Amidst the raging war, why has the Chinese president decided to visit Russia, and that too at a time when half of the world has imposed sanctions on Moscow? This is Xi Jinping's first international visit after securing a third term as president of China. It has been a difficult diplomatic spot for China since the war between Russia and Ukraine began as friends and allies of Russia. Beijing wants to cement its position as a peace broker after the Saudi-Iran deal. Successful mediation can actually help China with the West and avoid the kind of hostility that is growing towards it. Conversely, and at the same time, together, China and Russia want to challenge the US-based world order, and a deal here could help the two in doing so. Beijing has offered a 12-point peace proposal to end this war. This is part of China's push to try and act as a mediator. So, as part of this proposal, what is China saying? It is saying that conflict and war benefit no one, pitches a dialogue and negotiation as the way forward, wants sovereignty of all countries upheld but hasn't really named Russia or Ukraine, urges West to end sanctions on its friend Russia, calls for ending Cold War mentality, again a jibe at the West, opposes use of nuclear weapons in war, though this could be more directed to Russia, says will play a constructive role but hasn't really given any details. And will the West really look at China playing a constructive role or is the West going to be firmly wary? Along with that, we'll look at other questions. But the biggest question on everybody's mind is, as Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin meet, can it really end the war? First up, I want to go across to my colleague Sanjay Suri, who's joining us. He's been keeping a close watch on everything that's been transpiring in Ukraine, Russia's actions, and of course now a big visit, a big state visit with Xi Jinping arriving in Russia and meeting Putin. Sanjay, how are both the West and Moscow really looking at this visit?
You know, the way Moscow is looking at it has been indicated quite firmly well before this summit began. Two visits from Putin. The first to Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. It has been Ukraine's demand that the war will only end when Ukraine takes Crimea back. Second, the following day, Putin then went to Mariupol in the Donbas region, and that is a city that the Russians conquered after very, very fierce bloody fighting that led to thousands and thousands of casualties. Both those visits marked an affirmation of Putin's intent, that he intends at the least to hold on to areas that Russia has occupied. Once Putin has declared he will do that, and that declaration came very firmly before this summit, the fact is that Ukrainians are not about to let go of either. Ukraine is never going to come to a settlement that says it will abandon a substantial portion of its territory that Russia took by force and that it annexed. This clearly is pointing to an impasse. Another indication, again before the summit, that tells us everything about the summit, which is that President Joe Biden said that China cannot be an effective interlocutor. It is not a neutral party in this dispute. And so we have lines very firmly drawn before the summit, and nothing through this summit has suggested any reason to revise or review those positions that have been indicated earlier. This is clearly now an alliance building up between Russia and China. The only question is how far China goes, whether China will go, as the US says it intends to, by arming Russia with lethal weapons. If China stops short of that, that will be for the West limited achievement enough. But that is really the question hovering over the summit now.
Yeah, because, you know, this brings me to my second question, Sanjay, because everybody's pitching this as some sort of peacemaking exercise. But I've been wondering, there doesn't seem to be any end to this impasse, right? So it's great branding for this visit as some sort of a peace brokering visit, but there is no end in sight. There is really no formula that is acceptable. So why is she really in Moscow?
Well, this is clearly to firm up ties with the Russians, and there has been a good deal of rhetoric against the US coming from China that has become increasingly shrill of late. And of course, Putin has been at this game for a while. They have a common cause, so to speak, and that common cause is not just by way of rhetoric. There is a trade, and there is a good deal of bilateral trade between the two countries that is beating the sanctions. The imports and the exports from Russia are now heavily with China, and that is in the currency that both countries can live with. Again, beating sanctions. So there is an economic imperative for the Chinese, certainly to a limited extent. The Russians far more. For China, of course, it's a different game. China needs the US, it needs Western Europe as markets for its goods. There is a question how far China will go with this. It needs to protect its markets. but clearly politically she is upping the game and is looking to project China as the peacemaker. If peacemaker it does not turn out to be, and it does not seem likely that it will, it gives China a talking point that Zelensky was restrained by the US from coming to a peaceful settlement. What that peaceful settlement could be, the Chinese have not set out in any specific detail.
Okay.
They've talked about respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity, but not very much more than that in vague terms.
Yes, frankly, an end to this impasse can only come if the West can impress upon Ukraine to adjust a little bit of what they need to for Russia to stop. Otherwise, there doesn't seem to be any end to this war as it stands. But Sanjay, very quickly before I let you go,
that is not likely to happen.
That is not likely
to happen.
That is not likely to happen. So again, we're continuing with the impasse. At the same time, the Japanese premier is in Ukraine. Could anything be achieved from that? Because there's a lot of hectic movement in and out of Russia and Ukraine suddenly.
There's not likely to be any outcome from the Japanese visit that will change anything on the ground. A lot of visits have taken place. Every Western European country has gone. Every NATO leader has gone to Ukraine. Now it's the Japanese going. This is an affirmation of solidarity. It's a political signal. It's a willingness to arm and to strengthen Ukraine with economic support. It will be about expressions of that kind. It is not going to materially affect anything. It does not change Japan's position. It does not change Ukraine's calculation, which has always relied on support from Japan, which has been forthcoming. Nothing changes. It's just a way of underlining that earlier affirmation.
Okay, I think those two images then of Xi and Putin together, you've got the Japanese Prime Minister with the Ukrainian authorities, really just define what's really going on as far as this conflict is concerned. Sanjay Suri, thanks a lot for joining us. Let's open this up to the guests who are also joining us. I'm joined by Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow ORF, Fred Weyer, Political Analyst Expert based in Russia. Also Jean-Pierre Cabestan, Professor at Hong Kong Baptist University. Let me begin with Jean-Pierre first. If we were to read into Xi Jinping's mind, what do you see is going on inside? Jean-Pierre, can you hear me?
Yes, the question was to me.
Yes. What do you think is going on in Xi Jinping's mind as this visit is going on?
I think two things. I think he wants, first of all, to consolidate China's strategic partnership with Russia and really clearly show that Russia is not isolated. It's part of the fact that Putin has been accused by the International Criminal Court of war crimes. Xi Jinping thinks that Russia is a great power which China and the rest of the world need to interact and need to find a compromise with. The other reason is that China wants to play a meaningful role in the negotiation, which may eventually open at the end of the conflict. China wants to sit at the negotiation table one way or another. So in making that trip to Moscow, but also in announcing that he will talk to President Zelensky of Ukraine very soon, I think China wants to show that its role in the eventual negotiation that will take place is legitimate, is important. As you know, China made a 12-point proposal, which is far from being a peace proposal, but at least is a position paper which has upheld a number of principles which show that China is attached to sovereignty, and but at the same time, which is very close to Russia on this issue.
Yes, so there are conflicts of interest here as far as the so-called peace plan is concerned, and it's not very clear. Fred Weir, I'm coming to you. Is there a sight, is there anything in sight as an end to this impasse? All of these are just positioning exercises, or can anyone actually achieve a breakthrough?
Not on the short-term horizon. It clearly, both sides are girding for a few months at least more of hard fighting. Maybe after the spring, in summer, battles are over, we'll have a more decisive outcome. One way or another, one side may be exhausted or be ready to sue for peace. And at that point, what China is doing will become much more relevant. They are positioning themselves. I don't think that this is a weekend proposal that the Chinese are making. I think they realize that this is a long game, but at the end of the process, or when an opening appears, in it hopefully will, that China is a natural mediator in this case.
But who is more likely to run out of steam, as you said, post this current surge of battle? That's the biggest question. Who's going to really blink first?
And I don't know, the fog of war and the clashing narratives are such, but when I'm asked this question, I always say the mathematics favor Russia. All the big advantages are on Russia's side as long as they maintain the political will, keep mobilizing forces. They've only had one mobilization. Ukraine's had 6. Another Russian mobilization seems to be in the wind. If they keep doing that, I think they will grind Ukraine down in time.
Sushant, this is effectively a West versus Russia conflict. As much as the West may deny it, I think that is true. Do you believe the West could tire out of this conflict soon, or are they also steadfast in backing Ukraine to the hilt?
I'm not entirely sure how much the West is going to continue to back this conflict. A few months back, you didn't hear the kind of carping sounds you hear today from many of the Western capitals. The cost of war is in some ways also being borne by the Western capitals at a time when they have their own economic problems. So how much appetite they will have for an endless war, I think there's a bit of a question mark on that. But the question is, can the Chinese actually play honest broker? Do the Chinese have the bona fides or the equities with both sides to actually be able to play an honest broker between the two?
What do you think?
Number one. Number two, if you look at the Chinese peace plan, I don't know how anybody even calls it a peace plan. It's like something you give to a class 12 student and, ask him to write down a few principles on how peace could be brought about. That's not a peace plan. There has to be something much more substantive to that. But this is the typical Chinese hyping of, something which they produce, and then they wave it around the world and pretend that it's a peace plan. So it's not that. And then finally, I think there is also going to be the whole issue of how comfortable will be the West with the Chinese actually trying to play peacemaker. Will the West want the Chinese to take that kind of a role? I'm a little skeptical on that count.
So basically
especially after...
So what you're suggesting is that even if the Chinese could be successful, there's no way the West will let it be successful.
Yeah, because I don't think after what has happened in the Middle East, where the Americans kind of left a vacuum in which the Chinese have tried to step in. Although I don't think the Middle East peace process is going to go very far. It's a 1500-year-old problem and it's not going to disappear. But having in a sense ceded space out there, would the West be ready for the Chinese to step in as the big daddies who are now making peace between Ukraine, which is backed by the West, and Russia on the other hand? I'm not quite sure how that will play out in Western capitals, how much appetite there is going to be in the Western capitals for that kind of intermediation by the Chinese.
Yeah. So in any ways, this entire so-called, narrative of a peace broker China in Russia is doomed to fail. But Sushant, before I go across to Jean-Pierre one more time, I do want to ask you, how do you think India is looking at these developments?
Well, India,
I think,
as you know...
Jean-Pierre, Jean-Pierre, just one second. Let Sushant come in, then you can respond to the same question if you wish to. Yes, Sushant.
Look, from the Indian point of view, I think India is not happy with the war. I think India would be very happy if this war was to come to an end. But I don't think there are any exit ramps that India has for either of the two protagonists in this war. I don't think either of the two sides want to disengage from the war just yet. And I think one of the previous speakers had said that they're probably going to jostle for some more space, fight for some more space. And then probably by the time autumn comes, there will be some kind of, they will reevaluate the position at that point of time. Now, as far as India is concerned, the war has caused enormous economic problems. So ideally, India would like to see a peace take place, some kind of ceasefire at the very least. But I don't think anybody is asking India to intercede and play the mediator. And unless that happens, I don't think India should even get involved in this.
No, I meant how would India be looking at China wanting to play the mediator in this case?
Not with a lot of, I think there would be a lot of discomfiture in India.
Exactly, that's why I'm asking.
After having done what it did in the Middle East, doing the same thing in Eurasia, I think there would be a certain amount of discomfort in India. Because the more China expands its global footprint, the more uncomfortable India becomes.
Okay. Jean-Pierre, I'm coming to you for a final comment. You know, the entire world agrees that we do need to end this conflict. But are we in store for virtually an endless war? Because neither side would want to give up any territorial claims. And you understand that, possibly from both sides. So, what is it that can bring about any peace at all? Because this conflict is draining everybody, not just the two sides involved, but the rest of the world as well.
Yes, I mean, I think there is a willingness on the European side, at least, to try to speed up the end of the war, if possible. But it depends very much on the Ukrainians. Are the Ukrainians exhausted now? Are they ready to go to the negotiation table at this juncture? I doubt it, because clearly they want to gain more territory before accepting to hold the negotiations, at least to accept the ceasefire. As you may have noticed, Anthony Blinken and the US, the Biden administration, are very skeptical about negotiating a ceasefire now, when Russia still occupies 16% of the Ukrainian territory, because a ceasefire and the front line can very quickly turn into a boundary, a border which will stay for ages at the border between Russia and Ukraine. So that's something which the Ukrainians, but its European and American allies, want to avoid. So that's why they want to gain some more territory on the battlefield before moving to a negotiation.
Yes. In the end, though, regardless of whether they're able to regain some territory, doesn't look very good for Ukraine, precisely for the reasons Fred Weir outlined. And Fred, I have about 20 seconds left. So I want to ask you, internally in Russia, Putin has full support to just grind it out?
As far as we can tell, as you know, it's a very opaque political system. It's a sort of system where things happen at the top quite unexpectedly. But as far as we can tell, as far as all my soundings can discover, Putin's position is pretty solid, and the majority of the population at least acquiesced to the war effort.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Well, this is the reality of the situation as far as this conflict is concerned. No end in sight, turning out to be an endless war. I do thank all of the gentlemen for joining us with their time. On that note, slipping into a very short break. On the other side, we'll get you a report from America, where millions of residents are dealing with heavy rain, floods, gusty winds. This is in California. Stay tuned.
Amritpal Singh, but yes, at this point in time, it seems like a very, very uphill task, because his location has still not been traced by the Punjab police. In fact, the help of central agencies are also being taken. The IB, Intelligence Bureau, is also in the loop. IB is also trying to trace down his location. But yes, Amritpal Singh's last location is still not known. The police is still trying to figure out the map or through which route he might have fled. Till now, the latest update and that we have just brought to our viewers is that the Breeza vehicle in which Amritpal Singh was travelling, that has been seized by Punjab police. His clothes have been, the clothes that he was wearing on that day, that has been recovered. The knife that he was, the weapons that he was carrying, those weapons have been recovered. So yes, a big development for the Punjab police at this point in time, and once as the interrogation is going on, we are expecting some more developments to come out.
Okay,
but yes, at this
Anshul, a
point
very
in time,
quick
the Punjab police has
clarification
recovered
for
the
you, because
Breeza.
we do need to move on, but I do want to ask you quickly, are sources confirming that he is still within the state though, or is there no confirmation on that?
So there is absolutely no confirmation if
right.
at all he is within the state. The Punjab police wanted to believe that he is inside the state, but yes, since he has fled on a bike, it is very, very likely that he might have been able to cross the borders of Punjab.
Anshul, thank you for that clarification. Stay with us, please. Now, as you might already know, the 5 associates that have been taken into custody, including Amritpal's uncle, who you'll remember surrendered to police forces on Sunday night, all 5 of them are currently lodged in Assam's Dibrugarh. Take a look.
अमृतपाल सिंह के 4 साथियों के बाद आज फिर 2 जनों को यहाँ पर ऊपरी असम के डिब्रूगढ़ के जो सेंट्रल जेल है उसमें लाया गया है। पंजाब पुलिस के आला अधिकारियों के साथ इन 2 जनों को आज लाया गया है और उसके बाद आज फिर से यहाँ पर और कई जनों को लाने की बात चल रही है। हालांकि यहाँ पर अभी तक पुलिस ने कोई पुष्टि नहीं की गई है किनको लाया गया है। ऐसे बताया जा रहा है कि ये अंकल भी हो सकता है अमृतपाल के, और एक जो ड्राइवर थे वो भी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन अभी तक कोई ऑफिशियल डाटा हम लोगों को नहीं मिली है, ऑफिशियल खुलासा भी अभी तक नहीं हुई है। और आज शायद और कई जनों को यहाँ पर लाया जा सकता है। जिनको आज 2 जनों को लाया गया उन लोगों को गुवाहाटी से बाय रोड लाया गया था, और जो लाने वाले हैं उन लोगों को एयरक्राफ्ट थ्रू लाया जाएगा, लेकिन कब तक ये लोग पहुंचेंगे ये अभी तक पुष्टि नहीं की गई है।
देखो, मैं कह रहा हूं, दुनिया के अंदर जो इस प्रकार के आतंकवादी लोग हैं जो चाहते हैं कि भारत को बदनाम किया जाए, भारत के और ऐसे लोग जो आतंकवादी को सह देने वाले लोग हैं, आज इनको समझना चाहिए। लेकिन इस प्रकार से चाहे पाकिस्तान हो, खालिस्तान हो, ये खालिस्तान पाकिस्तान नहीं, अब तो रहेगा हिंदुस्तान। हिंदुस्तान सब पर सावा शेर रहेगा, सावा शेर, शेर नहीं सावा शेर।
सरदार भगवंत सिंह मान जी ने इस स्थिति दे नाल नजिठिया, मैं उन्हां नूं वधाई दिंदा। जिस ढंग नाल मान साहब ने स्थिति नूं सांभिया, ਉਹ ਵਧਾਈ ਦੇ ਹੱਕਦਾਰ ਨੇ, ਲੋਕ ਖੁਸ਼ ਨੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਗਲੀ ਦਾ, ਪਿੰਡ ਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ, ਕਿਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਅਥਰੂ ਗੈਸ, ਕਿਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਲਾਠੀ ਚਾਰਜ, ਕਿਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਗੋਲੀ, ਕਿਤੇ ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਸ ਢੰਗ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੰਭਿਆ, ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕੀਤਾ। ਔਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਅਗਵਾਈ ਹੇਠ ਵਿਕਾਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੀਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ।
In Punjab, where the hunt for Waris Punjab Day Chief Amritpal Singh Sandhu has entered its 3rd day today. Police have arrested over 100 aides of Amritpal Singh. They've seized cars, arms and ammunition linked to his nexus over the last few days. Yesterday, Amritpal's uncle and close aides surrendered before the Punjab police. The NSA, the National Security Act, has been invoked against them, and they've been sent to Assam. They've been placed in a jail within Assam. Now, we'll bring you more details about what the invoking of the NSA against them means, what the cases against Amritpal Singh himself are, and more about how the Punjab government is planning right now to catch the Waris Punjab Day chief. We'll bring you more details in just a second. First, these are some interviews from yesterday. Take a look.
इस केस में, इस पूरे एपिसोड में जो जितने भी इसमें बैड एलिमेंट्स इन्वॉल्व हैं, उसमें हम ISI का एंगल, उनकी फॉरेन फंडिंग, हमें सस्पिशन है कि इसमें ISI का एंगल भी है, फॉरेन फंडिंग भी है। उस पर फर्दर इन्वेस्टिगेशन हमारी चल रही है।
अमृतपाल जी बारे वो भी चिंतित सी कि वो क्यों अजे तक उन्हों का कोई पता, वो कहते सानू पुछया ने कि तुहानू कोई उसदी जानकारी है, तो वो बारे च सानू तो यो मीडिया के थ्रू ही पता है भी अजे तक वो पुलिस कह रही है भी नहीं सानू नहीं पता वो बारे च। एवें बेवकूफी बकवास किया जा रहा है, खाली बदनाम किया जा रहा है, ऐसे इहो जी कोई गल नहीं। तुसीं भी डेली जांदे सी उत्थे, इन्हां पुलिस ने भी सर्च की है।
Okay, we have more details on Amritpal Singh's movements over the last few days. We're going to share those with you, and we're going to go over to my colleague Anshul to bring you those details right now. Essentially though, after fleeing from Punjab police, Singh went towards Shahkot. He got down from the Mercedes and got into a breezer and started fleeing. I'll bring you more details. Let's go over to Anshul. Anshul, I believe the centre has right now told border security forces that they should be warned that there is a large chance that Amritpal Singh might try to make an escape towards either Pakistan or Nepal. Before we get to that aspect though, for our audiences, can you track what his movement has looked like right from Saturday when the centre first hoped to apprehend him to today, or the information that the centre does have? And Anshul, if I could ask, if you could geographically lay that out for us, track it for us across Punjab, please.
So yes, if you see how Amritpal was actually operating in Punjab, and especially after the entire incident of Ajnala happened, Amritpal actually became a big thing, and he was trying to project himself as the next guru who could go ahead and make sure that the kids of Punjab are free from drugs and other.
Santa Rosa County, California, where one resident is hoping crews can fortify a rain-soaked hill with gravel in an attempt to prevent a potential landslide.
There's another storm coming in. I'm expecting a little bit more of the dirt to shift. I feel hopeful, that they're working on fixing the issue, and, hopefully it's only positive movement from here.
Forecasters say California is getting hit with another atmospheric river, which can be described as a fire hose that blasts saturated air from the tropics into elevated latitudes and spraying increased amounts of rain or snow.
We're not hoping for it, but Mother Nature, she's got her own mind.
California has already experienced at least 11 of these atmospheric rivers this season, and this one is expected to last through Wednesday. Thousands of Californians were advised to flee their homes.
We had conversations with the residents here a few days ago. They all evacuated voluntarily and to the evacuation point at Porterville College.
More than 25 million people in California, Nevada, and Arizona are under alerts for strong winds. The National Weather Service says the San Bernardino Mountains could see up to 4 feet of snow by Wednesday.
You're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. Amidst the manhunt for Amritpal Singh, some breaking news now coming in. CNN News 18 has now accessed exclusive visuals of Amritpal Singh, where he can be seen ditching his vehicle and getting on a bike after changing his clothes. The visuals in fact show the Khalistani preacher's elaborate bid to escape the police and the supporters who are helping him. Anshul, who got access to those visuals, is joining me live from Jalandhar. Anshul, what is the date of these visuals and where exactly is this?
So yes, this happened right after the chase that was being done by the Punjab police to nab Amritpal Singh. In fact, on the 18th of March itself, when Amritpal Singh was able to skip from the grasp of the Punjab police, he went somewhere very close to Manhunt. Manhunt, remember, is the place where Amritpal Singh was actually supposed to do a sabha, and Manhunt was the very place where the police had made elaborate plans that as soon as Amritpal Singh would come here, they are going to arrest him. But somehow or the other, Amritpal Singh got a tip off that police is waiting for him there, and hence he tried to escape from there. And the entire chase sequence that we saw happening on that very day, on the 18th of March, happened very close to Manhunt. On the other hand, Amritpal Singh actually changed 3 to 4 vehicles. Initially, he was traveling in a Mercedes From that, he changed his vehicle to an Isuzu, and then he changed his vehicle to a Brezza. He changed all these three changes happened within the very small bylanes of Manhunt itself. And once he got into a Brezza, he goes to another village which is very close to Manhunt, known as Shahkot. And in Shahkot, along with his friends and along with his supporters, he ditches that Brezza vehicle and gets onto a bike. And while he was changing his bike, he goes ahead and changes his turban. Initially, the turban that he was wearing was a blue chola. He ditches that in the Brezza itself, and then he goes ahead and puts on that pink turban, changes his entire attire, puts on a jacket, and he puts on goggles as well. Also with a bag, he was trying to hide his face at that very point. So yes, this entire sequence that we have access actually clearly shows that how scared was Amritpal. After the Ajnala incident, remember the interviews that he gave to CNN News 18 as well, he very clearly stated that if any sort of attack or if any sort of arrest or FIR happens against any of his aides or any of his persons, the same kind of action is going to happen against the administration and against the Punjab police. But the manner in which he fled from the spot, just trying to save his life, leaving all his associates behind, actually tell the real face of this coward known as Amritpal Singh. So yes, the Punjab police is now tracing through this CCTV footage what was the last known location of Amritpal Singh. But yes, as of now, the entire map is being routed, but there still is no clue as to where currently is Amritpal Singh stationed.
Yes, I want to understand from you. So there is a man who actually gets him on a bike and then he helps him, escape. Who are these people? Are they supporters and followers of this supposed preacher?
So yes, these are associates of Amritpal Singh. In fact, the entire belt in which Amritpal Singh was operating in Punjab, he was not operating across the state of Punjab. In fact, he was operating very close to the borders of Pakistan, places like Amritsar, Taran, and few places in Jalandhar and Monga as well. So this is the entire belt in which Amritpal Singh had actually managed to garner some sort of support. And that is the reason why he used to travel in that entire area itself. He does not used to go beyond that to other parts of Punjab, and these were his followers. In fact, the police, we broke this story this morning that how he actually escaped, how he actually changed his vehicle to a Brezza. That Brezza has been recovered by the Punjab police. In fact, his chola that he was wearing, the blue chola that he was wearing, that has also been found by the Punjab police. Along with that, several weapons have also been recovered and a walkie-talkie as well. So he was actually prepared with his aides that he is going to escape. Now you see that there are two bikes and there are two people who are riding those bikes. The people who were riding those bikes, they have been taken into custody by the Punjab police, whereas Amritpal Singh and his other associate who was with him in that very vehicle, initially in that Mercedes, both these people have not been arrested as of now, and the Punjab police is now suspecting that he might have crossed the borders of Punjab. Either he went towards Pakistan or he went towards the Nepal border, which is actually a very porous border, and it is very easy to cross from India to Nepal.